You're listening to REIA Radio, the nationally trusted name in real estate investing. We dig deep to discover investors' why in real estate. If you want to skip all the BS and get in investors' heads, you're in the right spot. Be one of the thousands to check out REIARadio.com.
By the time we die, our kids, God willing, are going to be in their 40s and 50s. If they haven't made it by then, giving them money is the worst thing we could do. You want to teach them generational wealth, go read a book, let them watch you. Go outwork everybody else, let them watch you. Take them to a garage sale on Saturday, have them negotiate the price of a toy and sell it on eBay. That's generational wealth. It's the content, it's the character, it's the capability, it's impulse control.
This episode is brought to you by PropStream.com.
PropStream is one of the most trusted real estate data software solutions. PropStream benefits all real estate professionals. You can find properties and contact homeowners on the go with PropStream's mobile app. We offer free academy courses tailored to real estate investors and agents. Take advantage of our live webinar demos to learn the software and scale your real estate business. Visit www.propstream.com and sign up for your 7-day free trial to get more leads and grow your business.
Welcome to REIA Radio, episode 158 with Tom Krol.
That is almost as enthusiastic as I think Tom is just in everyday life with what I've seen from your content.
Just
out
the
there,
pre-notes, he's just been so energetic, and that's probably what
you're trying to match his energy.
I'm actually there because of him. This is why he's coach.
Well, this is funny. I have to tell a little bit anecdote here, and then we'll kind of dive into the conversation. But so Ted, as most of you know that listen to this podcast, Ted does most of the legwork and back end of the podcast with getting everything.
Most or all?
Let's just say most. I mean, I look it over sometimes. But Ted lines up almost all the guests. He does all the production stuff. He does all the editing, lines it up with his VAs and all that.
I line up. I don't do the editing, just so you know.
Yeah, so I know you don't. Yeah. Or the show notes.
Yeah.
But
I do the show notes.
Anyway, so I appreciate you, buddy. But so I don't generally know exactly who's going to be on the upcoming schedule for podcasts. And like, you know, we have
if you check your calendar, you know.
Right.
Okay.
But that, you know, so there we go. So I'll see an email come through and it'll be like, you know, so-and-so is booked on the podcast for this date and whatever. And then all of a sudden I see Tom Krol pop up on the thing. And it's like, you know, a couple weeks ago or 3 weeks ago. And I was like, Tom Krol. Holy shit, Tom Krol. And I go back through and I'm like, you were so
excited.
I did. I immediately pinged him and I was like, is this the Tom Krol that blah, blah, blah. And I like kind of like pulled it together. So I wanted to bring this up as context because in let's see, I started real estate investing in 2005, really started listening to podcasts when they started becoming a thing. Because, you know, this hasn't been technology. That's what, 15 years, maybe. Podcasts have really been pretty prevalent. And so I was listening to all the Bigger Pockets episodes. And then I was like, okay, Bigger Pockets is great, but I want to see what else is out there. And I was just Googling and trying to find other podcasts about investing. And I came across one that a guy named Todd Toback hosted. And it was called, I believe here, No Limits Real Estate Investing Podcast, if memory serves here.
Yeah.
And I listened to very early podcasts of his. So I started at episode 1 and he has a ton of them. I don't know if he's still doing it anymore, but
he is.
And then I came across an episode number 14. And there was a guy on there that had just lost his job. And his, you know, brother ended up being Todd Toback.
Whoa, what's up with the name differences there?
Stepbrothers. So that happened in fifth and fourth grade. His dad and my mom got married, and that's how we ended up. Yeah,
yep.
Stepbrothers.
So
I know everybody listening is thinking
that.
Bros. So yeah, okay. Yeah.
So we're gonna call him your brother.
Yeah, he's my brother.
So I was tuning into this and Todd's, you know, he's like one of those, like, let's do it and no limits and like this enter the dojo type of a guy. So super enthusiastic. And he's like, yeah, my brother-in-law or my stepbrother's going to be on the podcast today. And like, he just lost his job and he really wants to get into, it was wholesaling at the time. And we'll dig into this more, but And then he brought you on and just basically started with all the basics. Right. And I think if I remember right, it was like a 3 or 4 episode series. Is that right? He did
do or die. Yeah, the do or die series. Yeah. It was torture, and it was real. That was legitimate. That was real.
I will tell you, anybody catching this episode that wants to dial into this, check out that podcast. So
is it still active?
I don't know.
If it is, John, add this to the show notes so that we have a link to this so people can reference.
But I was listening through this and he walked you step by step through that, and I was just like, oh my God, this is so cool. You were doing role playing and like situational stuff, and really tactical things, and like here's how you talk to sellers, here's the scripts, and I mean, I don't want to spend like a huge amount of time on this because you have so much more to tell to your story, but I was just like, this is really cool. I was in, man. Like I was listening to that podcast and the growth that you went through just from the first episode to the last on that little mini series he did. And then I kind of, like time went by, and then I saw you resurface again, and you were on Bigger Pockets, the OG real estate podcast number 176. And I was like, holy shit, this guy has obviously done, like, I was blown away.
He's fanboying you.
I listened to that whole episode, and you told your story, and it was great. And then you've gone on to do so many other things, and you're coaching and teaching, and then exited a business, and like you have so much to talk about here. And I just loved how you share your tactical advice, and also it seems like you come across exactly how you are. You know,
yeah, that's good. That's accurate. I think that's pretty spot on.
But there's not a lot of people that are in this industry, especially people that have, influence status, that are actually those people. We've only actually met a handful of those people. And influencers wise, I mean, I would say that Pace Morby is actually the guy that you meet, and Brandon Turner is actually the guy you meet, as far as like, and Jay Scott. Was those people too, but like people you look up to, and they're like, and then you meet them, and they're like, oh my gosh, this guy's a real dick. And
I know a few of those guys too.
Yeah, we do.
It's funny. Pace Morby and I had him come down to Florida. We were hanging out. We went on a quail hunt, and I had a limo pick us up.
As people do.
Yeah, right. We went on and we're in gear for hunting gear, and a limo comes and picks us up for that quail. I was like, this is the best hunting trip. I have one of my buddies is Zach Booth, and he goes like in the mountains. I'm like, man, if I can't be on the balcony of a 5-star hotel shooting, standing still, I don't.
Oh my God, that's great.
Pace is a sweetheart. Yeah, he's a good guy.
We'll have to keep that in memory, because I just ran into somebody recently. There's a whole bunch of land out in a town called Beatrice outside there, and they actually will stock the 200 acres of land with whatever you want to hunt.
That's pretty funny.
And so you pay a fee. You want a certain type of deer or something in there. They put it out there. You go hunt it for a couple of days, and then
very cool.
Yeah, so that sounds like a limo experience right there.
But that episode was real, and Todd, he didn't just walk me through it. He pulled me kicking and screaming the whole time. I'm in little tiny quiet town, and he's in a big city with tons of houses, and the houses, not only are there more houses, right, but the houses are expensive. So I live in a small little tiny town that's a quarter or 1/10 of the size, plus the houses are way cheaper. And I'm going, there's no way. But Todd was, it's funny because now I've got about 88 business principles that I follow. I just follow on whatever adventure I'm on. And a lot of them came from that early adventure. And it was good to have someone who had personal experience. I mean, I remember I would ask Todd a question, and he would say, every question's an objection. If you're asking me a question, you don't trust me, and hang up the phone. And I'd be like, well, wait, like, should I send the mailer? So it was good to have that kind of mentorship, even though it was my older brother by 6 months, because we're stepbrothers, but, and we're a little competitive, right? But it was good in that season to submit to instruction, from someone who actually knew what the heck they were talking about, which was brilliant. And then once you get that first deal, I mean, I'm sure you guys heard this 1,000 times, right?
Like you got a shot in the arm, right?
It's just like a potato chip. I'm like, what in the world? I'm in love. I'll never, that first deal.
Ted's love language now.
Brother, I'm with you. It's, but yeah, that's beautiful. I love it. And I was like, that's it. I'm in right now. It was a great adventure.
Yeah. And now you have such a winding path of a story here. It's hard to, condense all this down when you have a limited amount of time on a podcast. But my goal with this, or our goal with this, is to kind of let you tell your story, but also what's exciting right now, because you've been doing this for a while now. Like you started, what was it, 2012 ish?
Yeah, I mean, it's over a decade ago. I'd have to look at the exact dates, but it's funny. I was looking at a journal entry the other day, and I wrote, this was after I had done some deals and after the Bigger Pockets episode, and I was starting, at the time it was called Hot Seat Wholesaling. Then I changed the name to Wholesaling Inc. But I remember I was just reading a journal note. I made a post about this a few days ago, and it says, I don't know if I should do Wholesaling Inc. because Sean Terry has flipped to freedom and he's doing a great job and I can't compete with him, and da-da-da-da.
So you had you had some self-doubt in there. Like that's one.
Oh yeah. I love it. Yeah.
One good thing about journaling, you can kind of go back and see the stuff you were worried about at one point, and then you're man, and it just kind of reinforces the idea of personal growth over a period of time. When it's one day to the next, it doesn't seem like you're making any progress. But when you pick up an old journal from like a year ago, 2 years ago, and you look and you're like, seriously, I was worried about that thing.
Do you
like
journal?
That's such a
journal?
Yeah.
Oh.
You know what was really interesting about the journal that was so profound? Not to go right to like a Marcus Aurelius episode or Epictetus episode here, but I will tell you it was very interesting, is that as I grew in different ways in success, I've noticed that my journal entries have changed from over a decade ago, where every single sentence started with I, to now you almost never see the word I in my journal entries. It was so interesting to read that, because I was reading my recent stuff, and as I was reading that old entry, I actually had found it upstairs. It was lost for a long time, and we were cleaning some stuff out of an old closet, and I found it was interesting to see that transition kind of take place, which was pretty cool. And there were other things too, of course, in there that were equally as interesting, but some of them are private. I'm pretty transparent, but some of the stuff in my journal, I do. I don't like just put that online totally, but it was pretty cool to watch.
Is it good enough for your wife to read it through it though?
Yeah, I always write. I'm a little guarded when I write, so I always write it as if my kids are going to pick it. Like I'm going to just drop dead of a heart attack, and my kids are going to pick this up. So yeah, I never am completely, totally transparent in my journal.
That is so funny you say that, because that is when I'm writing in a journal. Like you kind of want to be like, okay, if you can't be raw in a journal, like where can you? If you're just talking to yourself and you're writing it down and trying to like chronicle what's going on in your world, like you can't put it there. Where can you? But then I also start thinking about like, I don't know how long I'm going to be around. And if my kids are going through my stuff, they're like, oh, there's Dad's old journals. And I'm like, oh yeah. And I was like, I say something like totally not, you know what I mean? That should be kept in here, but it's on paper.
Well, it depends on what age they are when they read it too.
Yeah, I suppose.
I mean, if you read your parents' journal at this point, you'd be like, oh, man, I learned a lot from my dad. I got a real raw view of it.
I knew my brother was his favorite the whole time. On the
I went through this, too, because I was a photographer for over a decade in my 20s, and I probably shot over 400 bands. And I'd go travel with bands and shoot their photos.
Awesome.
And there was a lot of crazy stuff that happened when you're in that industry. And there was a point that I got West Nile, and I thought I was going to die.
I thought you were too. Yeah, you look like you were going to.
Remember that?
You were yellow.
For 3-4 weeks, I had a temp, 103 to 106 temperature. It was crazy. I'm like, I'm not going to live till tomorrow. And at one point, I'm like, okay, so what am I going to do? So I wrote down all my passwords to everything. They handed to the family, and that way they could access all my stuff. But I also said, hey, you know what? There's a lot of photos and I'm going to talk about like a terabyte of pictures. And I was like, there's things I don't want my family to see. Like, and there was nothing like crazy inappropriate, but I just didn't want certain things out there. So I deleted all that stuff out, because I didn't want my kids going through it and like judge me because I was partying backstage with the band, and there's some photos I took of what the bands do. You know what I mean? And
some of my craziest stories was like, man, Josh was really going after me on that Bigger Pockets episode. But other than that, it's like that's about as wild as it gets around here.
The things that happened were just nuts. Like
I can imagine.
Like Nickelback hooking up with one of my friends in the alleyway, and Cottonmouth Kings and what they did in their limos were crazy. Or 311 and a couple of those
That's
guys.
funny.
Wow.
It was like
That
Britney
sounds
Spears
like-
and all these people we got to hang out with over the years.
Wow.
I
Yeah.
it was so boring. I was in the chess club in high school. This was not.
Hey, I was at chess club in
Yeah.
elementary school, so I'm
That did not lead to like limo adventures. Yeah. Although Julie and I did get kicked out of a small Christian college for having Logan as a surprise in the first semester, which was a blessing, right? Because now I was able to start work right away. My dad's like, "Get to work. That's it. College is over."
How old are you when Logan was born?
I was 20. Julie was 19.
Oh my
And
God.
now he is 25. But he went full scholarship, went to medical school, just went to his white coat ceremony. I mean, I'm writing.
Oh, that is super cool. Congrats.
I'm writing them a letter.
So what's the age gap with the kids? You have 5 kids. What's the age gap?
So we started totally broke with Logan right away. He was at our wedding, and then we waited about 10 years. Then we had Lacey. Then we have 3 littles, 10, 8, and 6. So Lacey's 16 today.
Happy birthday, Lacey!
Happy birthday.
Lacey is 16 years old today. So she just went down to Miami with her mom. So and her best friend and her sister. So they're gonna have a great adventure down there. And that's it. It's awesome. It is different in your 20s having kids than it is in your 40s because now I'm 45. But it's a little different. Your patience get tested a little faster. But it's a great adventure. We have a lot of fun. Julie's a great mom, and yeah, Logan's in medical school because of her, not me. I can promise you that.
You and I are almost the exact same age, and I could not imagine having a 25-year-old. My kids are 7 and 11.
Okay.
I waited.
Yeah.
I waited till I was later. But with all you got going on, the coaching, the real estate, everything you do, how do you balance 5 kids and then having time for all the work that you do? Like, do you have structured time with the family, or how do you do it?
I do. I mean, I've gotten a lot of coaching. I always have a coach. People talk about this, and sometimes it's like kind of satirical or just anecdotal, but I have to have coaches all the time in everything I do. I always have a coach. I mean, here's some logistical, because my brain, I had an untimed SAT test and I still got it at 990. I didn't break 1,000. So I'll give you my kindergarten brain, approach to this. One calendar, right? So if you look on my calendar on Thursdays, you'll always see, let's see if I can show you my calendar without revealing my private clients and who everybody is. But basically on my calendar, you'll always see like a little, like there's a letter E. Yeah. And that just means all of my kids, Logan, Lacey, Lily, Lucas, and Levi, their second initial and their first name is AEIOU. So Thursday night, 5:00, it's either a daddy-daughter date or a father-son adventure.
Oh, I love this.
I think you've got to be intentional about putting that stuff on an actual calendar and blocking it off. I also find that I think, balance is challenging. One of the things that my coaches taught me early on is don't seek balance, seek harmony. This was a game changer for me because I understood then that there was a season where, Daniel Lapin teaches us this in the Business Secrets from the Bible. And so do other people like Scott Alexander from Rhinoceros Success and even Viktor Frankl from Man's Search of Meaning. Things happen in seasons. Jim Rohn is good about this too. And you have to just recognize that it is entirely appropriate for a season, right? Hustle is a season, not a lifestyle. But for a season, it's entirely appropriate to prioritize certain things where you are going to move from one seat to another. And that's, dad's priority. And I'm going to go all in. And I think balance really happens over decades. It doesn't happen, in seasons. So I think harmony is really what I have found that when I'm starting a new project, I'll also say this, which is very interesting. I've noticed that as I get a little older and more seasoned at this, there's a speed to getting things done, and that hustle, grit, perseverance, stick-to-itiveness in the beginning, those become much, much, much shorter, right? Wholesaling Inc. for me was years of work. The first time I went into a broker, he literally left the room. He's like, "You can't sell this. This is a job." He laughed. He literally left the room. It's like, so it's, I think that now when you start, also you can tend to acquire a business instead of start a business. So there's a lot of things that contribute to different seasons, I think, where you can prioritize one thing over another.
Back to the family side,
Yeah.
we ask this question all the time, especially people that have kids. And one thing I appreciate is, and I think that somebody will take out of this is the fact that you just threw a little nugget that you plan a daddy-daughter night every night of the week, and on that Thursday night's your time. And I think that people we talk about all the time is like, one thing, we always have dinner every night of the week unless there's sports. Right. I try to coach as many teams as I can before the kids hit middle school, and because I'll be coached out, I won't be available to coach at that
your
time.
Your skill set is going to hit the ceiling.
Done. Yeah, it's already happening in elementary school, and but I think that when we talk to somebody, and that was a great tip. I mean, we make a point every month, and we only have 2 kids though. My wife takes a kid out on a date. And I take one of our kids out to date, and we kind of rotate on that. Yeah. And then you have a great moment. Maybe it's a movie night. Maybe we're going putt-putt. Maybe we're just doing a dinner. And I think it's really important for for people, listeners right now, don't let your careers consume you.
Right.
There's only so much time that you have with those children, and everything you do with them right now are memories that they're going to have for the rest of their life. And so I applaud you for having 5 kids coming and making that time.
Yeah, no, I'm great. I agree. I think I'm the best. No, no, but all kidding aside, I mean, I think, I drop the ball all the time, right? But I think that's why
we all do.
Yeah. But it's also, I would say, I mean, there's a lot to unpack here, but I do think that it's also entirely appropriate that if you're really struggling financially, I don't think there's anything wrong with, prioritizing like, hey, this is what has got to get done right now. And this is how dad expresses his love to the family, is that, or mom, I'm in the office and I'm doing this. And I've also learned logistically from other coaches. I mean, Jeff Walker taught me once, this 50-10-50, which, I always have this on my desk, which is like a 50-hour minute class, 50 minutes on, no distractions, door shut, on my calendar. So if I'm starting a new project or a new adventure, 50 minutes the night before, I write down what am I going to be working on, 50 minutes laser focused work, no email, no internet, no phone, no nothing, 10-minute break, right back at it at 50 minutes. I keep 2 notebooks. I don't have them by my side, but I have a someday maybe folder, right? So when we think of an idea, it goes in there. To-do list, right? So if I think, I got to pick up Lily's ballerina shoes, and Brian Tracy calls us, he teaches us about a brain dump. So if I'm in my 50-10-50, I will get more done in those 110 minutes and most people get done in 2 or 3 days. And that's legitimately true. What I do there is, if I'm doing the 50-10-50 and I have an idea, it goes either in my someday maybe folder or my to-do list. So little hacks and tricks and strategies like that do work. But to me, the thing that was frustrating early on was balance. Balance I couldn't understand because I wasn't sure what people meant by that. Like, what did they mean? Did they mean you literally have to try to sit in 2 seats or 3 seats simultaneously? Or is it like an hour? I found that when it was explained to me that you go through seasons and you're just seeking harmony over time, that to me made more sense. And I said, okay, it is okay to, hey, if I've got to work for the next 3 months on something and prioritize it, it's okay to say, hey, this is what dad's doing. And, I need that time and space to breathe and to serve my clients that way, or whatever it was, whether it was I was teaching real estate or doing deals or teaching coaches or so on and so forth.
I really like that because it just illustrates the point where, I mean, you have a 25-year-old and you have, how old's your youngest?
6.
So 25 and 6 is a big spread. Obviously, they have way different interests and goals in life when you're dealing with children. By the way, like I'm looking at my picture on the screen right now. I'm 4 years older than you, and you look like somebody just belt sanded your face like about 5 minutes ago because you look so much younger than I do.
I've got a whole team.
So much younger.
Like, I don't know if you have a
so much younger.
Shut up.
I don't really a huge difference. That's how young you look compared to Owen.
Like I don't know if you have a great filter on your camera or we just have a really high
so much younger.
Will you stop? If you move the light here, let's move the light. There's my whole, the lighting will change, but
my statement stands. Anyway, kudos to you or whoever your esthetician is because that worked out good.
Well, I will say something that's really
We don't have a
interesting.
makeup crew, just so you know here, Tom.
Oh, I've got
That's
20
basically true.
people
Yeah.
behind the camera. No, but when you think about this too, and I think this is important for anybody who's listening, especially if they're struggling with this, is that I have never in my life met anyone with any significant amount of success or wealth who didn't go through a season of outworking every single person around them. I love Rachel Ray. She's one of my favorite people, right? Never went to culinary school, but when you read her background, right? First one in everything, wore every hat, took over by overworking, providing value. I think you have to go through, people, especially if you're confused and you have to go through that where it's almost an OCD thing. It's the first thing you think about in the morning. It's the last thing before you go to bed. I am going to do this or I'm going to die trying. I think that this is why rock bottom is such a strong foundation, because it gives you that singularity of focus and purpose and determination. The fact that Julie and I were so broke and we had, I'd gotten fired when I think that was one of the greatest advantages. You do, I think, have to go through that process. Anyway, I think it's a good way to, use it to your advantage.
I was just having a conversation with my wife yesterday, and it was kind of in the same vein of what we're talking about right now. God, that camera angle is so bad. I feel like I have. Okay.
You look good, brother. You look good. Oh, and you look good, man. I'm
Thanks,
telling you,
man.
you look good. Absolutely.
So Aiden, come on.
He doesn't look good.
He looks great, and he's more fit. You're more fit than I am. So whatever age you are, I'm sure we have the same body type. Mine is just a facade. But you're
Owen is ripped. I'll give him that. But
there you go.
Luckily, 95% of our listeners listen to the podcast and don't watch the video.
Yeah, face for radio. Anyway, I was having this conversation with my wife yesterday because we have our daughter who's 16. Like it was Halloween yesterday. This will air next in a couple weeks, but she was really stressed and like she struggles with ADHD, or it's more ADD than anything. Like it's something she struggled with her whole life. She gets hyper focused on something and just cannot let it go. It can be problematic, and it can be something that you're like, oh my God, you're so far ahead of other people that aren't operating the way you are. Where I'm going with this is a in the vein of a weakness can be a strength.
Oh yeah.
And she Jen brought it up to me, because my wife, because she's like, well, you're like that. Like it was before it was real estate, it was this, and which was not a good path I was on. And she's like, and then you got into real estate and you just went, like, it's immersive. So when you're hyper focused on something and you're able to do it like nobody else is willing to do or able to do for even if it's a short amount of time, that will catapult your progress way past anybody else that is, even if they're just doing it 8 to 5 or whatever. So I think there's something to be said for what you're talking about, which is, everybody talks about work-life balance and all that. How do you manage your family and business and everything? But I love what you said there, because I've never really heard anybody say it the way that you did, which is there are seasons in your life or seasons in your work where you need to, as long as you're communicating what is going on to your family stakeholders or the people around you, like, hey, now's the time for the grind. Like, here's what I'm trying to do. Here's what the goal is. And I got to put in like 3 months of grind, and, I could use some help.
Brother, I was just having this conversation. This is why, and everybody gets so confused with this. They think, even the topic of generational wealth, which I think everybody messes up, right? This is generational wealth, is how you do this. They're watching you and using your ADHD and ADD. And believe me, I have every one. I had untimed SAT, right? So I totally get it. But I think, look, by the time we die, our kids, God willing, are going to be in their 40s and 50s. If they haven't made it by then, giving them money is the worst thing we could do. You want to teach them generational wealth, go read a book, let them watch you. Go outwork everybody else, let them watch you. Take them to a garage sale on Saturday, have them negotiate the price of a toy and sell it on eBay. That's generational wealth. It's the content, it's the character, it's the capability, it's impulse control. So I think managing these things that everybody looks at as a deficit is a huge mistake. That's my greatest advantage, is that I can laser focus on I'm like a pit bull. You tell me what to do in a childlike way, because I'm not always able to understand all. I mean, still to this day, Todd will try to tell me what a subject sandwich lease purchase. I'm like, what are you talking about, brother? I have no idea, right? But you give me like step by step. Oh man, I'll kill it all day long.
Yeah, I love that. I love that whole just way of looking at things can change, and your age is going to dictate where you're at in life and what your
Right.
goals are. But I think, communicating what your goals are and then executing on them, but also doing it in a way where you are giving the best of yourself in whatever facet that you're focused on at the time. That is what it's all about. And so
Damn.
balance doesn't necessarily have to mean if you have 4 legs of a stool, they're all exactly equal. It could still be balancing, even though you're spending more time on family at this point when you're going on a 2-week vacation and refilling your cup with, the people that you love. Or if it's, I really want to kick ass in business right now. And to do that, I'm going to have to devote the next 2 months to just working my butt off and getting these things done. And here's why. And then as long as you communicate that to all the stakeholders of the 4 pillars or the 4 legs of the stool, I think that's the trick.
I totally agree.
But it's always a constant, struggle with that throughout life. And you get into different phases where what's important to you 5 years ago is not the same thing that's important today.
Oh yeah.
Right.
It's very true. But that's how we progress, right? I think, and that's what causes burnout, is not progressing, being well-rounded and just moving and moving and moving and not actually going anywhere. That hamster wheel, I've never met a successful person get burnout from working too hard. They get burnout from working hard and not moving forward. So sometimes it takes that extra 10% where you can just be completely honed in and actually move the needle. This should be something that's appreciated and built upon. It shouldn't be it's entirely appropriate. It shouldn't be something that we say, try to move on. No, go in deeper. I mean, all the greatest success stories of our time are stories of all in. Even my favorite podcast besides you guys is All In Podcast, right? It's like, I love it. So
Besides us.
Bam.
Nice.
Easy.
Now, what I love about this conversation is we're talking a lot about mindset and how to operate in with a family and a business and life in general, and the kind of different facets of your life change for over time. But you have done some really amazing things, and when you zoom out of this, you started this, let's say it's 10, 12 years ago, right? You started this business, and could you just give us a macro view of how your life has changed over the last 10, 12 years? And then I also want you to tell a little bit about your story when you first got started and kind of catch us up to where things sit right now.
Yeah, I mean, for the benefit of not ego feeding and just sharing things that other people can implement, I would say this. It is not about what I did or what, if you're listening, right, it's not about what you do. It's first about who you are and who you have to be. I was messing up all the time because I was the wrong person. I didn't know that, but I needed that punch in the face to be like, hey, you got to approach this with a little bit of humility. I remember the first thing that Todd did is, I went to a Sean Terry conference. He had a program called Flip to Freedom. And I remember meeting a few people there. There was Nazar Alibri from Charlotte, North Carolina. And there were a few other people, and we kind of were starting at this, starting off or, going through this together. And Luis, who taught me persist until failure quits. But I remember there were things that I was doing wrong. I had multiple people recommend the book Rhinoceros Success, which is why I have a rhino up there. Rhinoceros Success to me. I got to know Scott Alexander, the author of that book, which is incredible. But I think it's about who you are. It's about who you have to be before what you do. Because if your ego is getting in the way, the reason I was failing is because I thought I knew I was a know-it-all. I mean, I'm literally getting the worst results you could ever get, but you would be blown away by how much confidence, how I would puff my chest out. It's incredible. So I think that you have to go through this process of just becoming a different person, even financially, because a lot of my clients I just help. And I'm not holier than thou. I'm not I have tons of problems all day long. I was late for this podcast, right? But what I would say is you got to start. You got to be a go-giver. I remember the first time I met Brent Daniels, who I ultimately ended up selling Wholesaling Inc. to. First conversation, my favorite book is Go Giver by Bart Berg. Have you ever read it? Oh, I have. Right. So I think that all successful people, they have these commonalities. There's these common threads. They're generous. They're abundance mindset. And these are not just words. These are fundamentally, if you look at my text thread with all of my friends who, Joe McCall, Brent Daniels, all of these people who are phenomenal human beings. I mean, look at my text. They're all snippets of books. They're going on great adventures. They always have a positive attitude. They always have a smile. They approach everything in the right way. I hear some of these people online and they talk about the fear of failure. I've never met an entrepreneur in my life who has a fear of failure. Fear of success. Oh yeah, all day long. Right. But I think that there's a lot of things that's just misguided information out there. So my journey, really, it was about getting out of my own way, submitting to instruction of someone who was further ahead of me, and really just not ego feeding all day with poor results. So anyway, I think, when you go through all of the different stages that I've gone through, every advancement I've had, it's been because I had the right people at the right time when I was with Wholesaling Inc. and I was trying to sell it and they were laughing me out the door. Bill Bonner's team from Agora Financial. I never got to meet Bill, unfortunately. It was one of my greatest bucket list items is to meet this individual. But, his team was like, hey, you're doing everything wrong. Here's what you got to do. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And, submitting to that. It's very funny because I think a lot of times too, especially as we start to get success, we really resist. I don't know why, either like authority or people who are ahead of us, or, we become too cynical. So we just resist instruction, and breaking that down for me, that was the biggest change that allowed for all of this stuff to happen and happen quickly. That's the other thing, is this stuff happens. It kind of happens slowly and then all at once. And that's what I think makes such a great adventure. So I've been enjoying this ride the whole time, and I'm kind of like, in some ways I'm a driver, in other ways I'm just a passenger, but it really is a pretty cool journey to be on.
I got to admit, I'm a little curious to see what you would look like when you're depressed, because I can't imagine it at all. You just seem so positive all the time that life must be awesome, or at least you fake it.
Yeah,
really well.
I get down. I do get down. I mean, I have times where I've been down before. I think, for me, I think that there are different things I had to overcome. What would be the most true thing to that is that I used to get depressed because the arrow in front of me all day long, every day, was pointed in. Right. The first book that Sean Terry talks about, at his conference, that 3 people recommended me in 24 hours was The 4 Spiritual Laws of Prosperity. I always have a copy right near me, but it's this book by Edwin Gaines. It's called The 4 Spiritual Laws of Prosperity. And it just talks about tithing, forgiving, and it just goes through 4 things that you've got to do. This was her note to me, which was so awesome. I can't believe I get to meet these authors. I literally had never read a book until I was 33, and now I have shelves of friends of authors. But I think that when I was, I used to throw the best pity parties. My self-talk was, I would just repeat things all the time that were, I was building evidence all day long about things that I thought were true. So I have gone through depressions and anxieties and things like that until I shifted that arrow that was pointed in front of me all day. And I just was like, oh, and I turned it into pointing to other people. I think that was the biggest needle mover thing that I did.
Do you have anything right now that keeps you up at night? Like what are do you have a pain point in your life or business that causes you to lose sleep?
I'll tell you this. It's so interesting. Sometimes I'll get a phone call from, this just happened. I won't name the person, but it's someone that we probably all know. I'm sure it is. And, he's older than us, and I'm just choosing my words here so I don't reveal who it is. But he's really upset right now, and he's going through it, and he made some just mistakes that anybody could make. And he called me up for some help, and I'm helping him. He's a good guy. I always tell my clients this because I think everybody gets this wrong, and I'm a huge fan of breaking everything down to its simplest and most palatable definition. To me, success is an internal comparison to your ideals, right? So On this line, you're not more successful than me, and I'm not more successful than you, because that's an impossibility. It's an individual journey. It's based on what we desire and our ideals and how close we are to closing that gap. Wealth is entirely different, or it's 180 degrees different. Wealth is an external comparison to others. So on this call right now, either you have more money than I have, or I have more than you have, or you have more transportation or mobility or health or whatever, more options, right? If there's an emergency, we both have chest pain and your brother is the best heart surgeon in the world, you're wealthier than me by a mile, right? So I think that success is an internal comparison to our ideals. Wealth is an external comparison to others. I think wealthy people always have more options, and those options are better, whereas poor people have less options and they're not as good. With success, every entrepreneur I've ever coached, and I've now coached over 5,000 people, and I can say that every single success that I've had or that they've defined, it's always some variation of a good night's sleep. So it's interesting that you bring it up that way, right? Because I've never had an entrepreneur say, oh, I want this so that I could be up all night with anxiety and depression, right? And crippling fear. I think that I've been really good about finding the things that produce success. Like, for instance, never do anything for wealth at this, just never sacrifice success for wealth, right? Number one, first rule. I also think that you have to know what success is, and then you have to do things that work for it. So I can say, and God willing, it'll stay this way, but I don't have anything right now that keeps me up at night. I sleep like a baby at night. I'm always working on closing the gap between my ideal and where I am, but I'm not moving the goalpost, right? I don't do things that for money that I don't want to do. I see a lot of people who are constantly, a lot of the things that I see now that I've been in this game for over a decade, red flags and warning signs, people who come to me and they say, instead of saying, I want to be the best, they say, I want to be the biggest, right? Things like that. That will lead to not having success. And I'm not better than anybody, but now that I get to coach coaches and I get to coach real estate investors and I see all their P&Ls and I know who's who and what's what and, who's on stage and who should be and who shouldn't be and all that other stuff. It's interesting to see because they confuse wealth and success, and they're making decisions that will work against success. So God willing, it'll stay this way. But no, right now, I don't really have anything that's, keeping me up at night. I have things I want to do that I haven't done yet, but nothing that I'm anxious about.
When you look back on how you got started in this, which seemed, I mean, let's face it, if based on what I know about your story, you took a huge leap of faith in saying, all right, Todd, bro, teach me your ways. It had to be a little bit, because you mentioned you're only 6 months apart. So I would assume that like you had a little bit of, and if you're competitive with him, you're kind of like eating humble pie by taking advice from somebody that's real close to you in age. And you're like, okay. And I will applaud you. Like I said, I just listened to this episode this morning, so it's kind of top of mind, but you were very like humble. And you said, look, I don't know what you're talking about in several of these areas. So just teach me. And you asked a lot of questions. And I think with all the stuff you've done when you cross section your life into decades, I would say, not knowing you personally, but over the last decade or maybe, 12 years, what a story, man. What a ride. Like you sold a landscaping business,
right?
Lawn and landscaping business, and stayed on, if I remember right, as a kind of consultant or like you stayed on to get them from point A to point B.
Correct.
And then basically they're like, you're good. Like, why don't you just we got it from here. So like, get out basically. And then you came to your brother and you're like, I know you're in real estate. Seems like you're successful. How do I do this?
Right.
And then now you exited a business, a coaching business. So I just am so fascinated with your story, because if you look at 10 years of somebody's life, that is a long time, but it is a short amount of time,
right?
Depending on your perspective. And how do you sum this up? I mean, you started out, you didn't know anything, you learned from your brother, and then you all of a sudden just came out like gangbusters, and then you're kind of like peace out now. And it's okay. Well, I don't even know where to go with this story, but can you just maybe like give us a summary of like along the way what happened?
Well, I can say this. I've always been blessed with really good mentors, from Todd being the first one, Todd Toback, my stepbrother, he's a rock star. And then, I got to spend time and know Robert Kiyosaki, which is incredible, right? Because one of my clients was a Fox News anchor and got to know Robert and then introduced me. And so I've had really, really good people pouring into my brain for this whole decade. And, I will say this. You first have to be humble. You have to admit that you don't know what the heck you're doing. And then you have to have really good mentors. It's funny. I have these rules that I follow that I've been building up for over a decade. And there's 88 of them. But I can give you, if you want, I can give you the first 10 that I promise you, everybody following this advice will, if they implement this stuff, this works 100% of the time. Do you want, can I go through them? Do I have a minute to?
Well, I don't feel like I can say no now.
Okay.
Take all the time you need.
I'll go through them. There's number one, revenue in first position. This is the differential, right? People say, well, what about people over profits? I don't understand what that means, because if I guarantee you'll have if I take away all your revenue, your customers are going to suffer. Your customer service is going to tank. So when you wake up in the morning, revenue in first position, until you hit some of your goals, right? So no logo design, domain names, this and that, and buying an $8,000 conference table and renting office space and all the stuff, right? The valley of just preparation and preparing to do. So revenue, sell it, don't build it and sell it and let them build. All those old rules, right? And by the way, all these rules, they're not, these are just my interpretation of rules that are 3,000 years old, right? So you wake up in the morning, revenue first position, that's it. I don't want to hear it. You're my client. That's what we're doing. The second rule, everyone's full of poop. Everyone's full of, you know what? And this fights for first place, by the way. Stop comparing yourself to all these people. I was comparing these people who were totally broke driving nice cars. I know people who make $100,000 a year and they lease a $60,000 car. A decade or so ago, I would be envious of these people and trying to compete with them. So I'm just telling you, everyone's full of poop. Put that in your head and just know it. That's a key rule. Number 3 is never stop doing what works. I see this all the time. I have people, they have success, right? And then they just literally, I'm like, well, you did it again, right? You automated it, right? No, one time. It was a coincidence. It was serendipitous. Okay. So never stop doing what works. Number 4 is a killer. Thank God I had thank God that I had the right mentors when I started. Rule number 4 is never, ever partner when you can hire. And this whole 50-50. Yeah, there you go. Right there.
Oh, just give me the look.
This 50-50, I'm really good at this and they're really good at that and they're not good at that and I'm really good at this. So we're going to be good 50-50 and we've known each other. We're almost like brothers, but we're not really. All of this stuff is garbage. Do not do it. There's no such thing as a 50-50 partner. There's nothing wrong with partnerships, right? But a partnership is, hey, I can't hire you, but I want access to your network. If I give you 3% of the business and you give me 20,000 and you give me a line of credit and I'll pay you $1 for each sale in perpetuity, beautiful, right? You can't hire O'Leary or Harrington or whoever, and that's fine. But this 50-50 thing causes more suffering. It causes more problems. You are already not likely to make it in business. You add a partner, it increases those chances of failure and it increases suffering. Family members get involved, then your spouse starts telling you that you work harder than she does and this one, or he does and this one and that one. No. Rule number 5 is only take feedback from 5 people. This is the only thing that anybody gets from this podcast. I am telling you, this will change your life instantly. Those 5 people are the people who love you, the people who pay you, the people you pay, the people who regulate your industry, and the people who are already where you want to be. If they are not on that list, I don't care what anybody else does in their household. They can take advice from anybody. They can take advice from the guy who says, well, I feel like I can teach this because this coach taught this athlete how to play in this game and they won that championship and they never played the game themselves. Fine. That's good for you. Not in my household. Me, my wife, our children, you're not in that 5 group. I'm not taking feedback from you. This is one of the most detrimental things that I see with people who are really suffering in business and in life is they'll tell their problem to anybody and anybody can give them advice. No, what do you call it on where it comes from. And you'll also, I'll notice as a little trick is always notice when you ask someone who's successful for advice and someone who's not. People who are not, they'll give you an answer instantly. They'll say, oh, have you tried this? Whereas person who has any real wealth or success will say, let me understand the problem more, right? They understand that problems are elusive. Solutions are easy, problems are elusive. So I have found that has been one of my greatest advantages, is that, and that's something that came from Todd and from other people too. And they were like, no, don't do that. Another big one is, then you have, when everyone's part-time, the project will fail. I see people do this all the time. They're going to start something like a coaching business, and no one's full-time. So basic rule, if you're going to start a new business from scratch, I don't care if you hire an executive assistant locally, someone has to go to bed and wake up thinking about that business and 100% compensated from it. So again, you see the people who suffer, they come to me, who's the one person who's full-time? Oh, well, Jerry is full-time, but he's just working on this other thing first. And as soon as it's done and X, Y, and Z, no good. Rule number, what are we up to? 8. Rule number 8 is, read 8 pages a day. This is the biggest game changer. I mean, these 10 rules, if people do this, right? If you say, Tom, what is the difference between the people who have the greatest amount of wealth and success in your network and the people who don't? Reading, right? Sometimes they'll listen to an Audible book and then they'll say that they read it, but they really listened to it. Fine. I have no problem with Audible, but read.
Yes, I know that's me.
Listen, here's the thing. If you can read street signs, you can read a book. Don't listen to what your teachers told you about. You visual learner, audio learner, you lose your place. You get tired when you read. Fight through it. 8 pages a day, and you'll read more books than you even will know what to do with. Rule number 9 is, whether you're just starting or you're sitting with your marketing people and they're confusing you with all of these terms and acronyms of ROAS and loss leaders and book funnels and self-liquidating offers and all that is garbage. Here's marketing. Marketing is you got to get attention. You got to keep attention. You got to convert attention. There's 9 rules to marketing. Number 1 is it's got to be copied. Don't be creative. Don't come up with your own marketing. It's all been done before. Go to somebody else, copy it identically, cross off their word, put in your word, plug it in. Get this book by Bill Glazer, Outrageous Marketing, one of the best books ever written. So there's, you have page number 26 of $100 million offers by Alex Hormozzi, right? He tells you how to make a, what is that called? A grand slam offer. So copied is number 1. Number 2 is it's got to be big. Nobody wants what you have to sell. Most people don't want it, or most people who own a home don't want to sell it. And most people who do want to sell it don't want your low price, right? So it's a volume game before it is a talent game, right? Volume. It's, you go low, you're going to have statistical anomalies that are going to mess you all up. Number 3 is it's got to be consistent. Snow, rain, Christmas, Hanukkah, Kwanzaa, 4th of July, Memorial Day. The marketing goes out every week, every day, same time, no matter what. The next rule on marketing is it's got to be singular. This is so easy, right? I remember starting off, the people who didn't end up going anywhere and the people who crushed it. People who didn't end up going anywhere, I want to be everywhere. I'm going to be on TikTok and Instagram and Facebook and billboards and TV and radio and billboard signs and bandit signs. And I'm going to go cold calling and direct mail. People who are consistently making $100,000 a month, every month, $100,000 in their pocket, $100,000. What do you do to get your sellers or to do your marketing? I found one channel, totally dominated. I'm the best guy in town. No deal happens without me happening on this channel. Now I put somebody in charge of it. It's automated. It's consistent. I move on to the next channel, right? These are the rules of marketing. I mean, it's so funny because you look at it, it's so obvious, but people make this mistake again and again and again and again and again. So the other rule with marketing is response time. It's got to be fast. The minute somebody raises their hand, you got to be on it like Johnny on the spot. Every time we look at metrics and we say, why is the conversion rate so low? There's a 50% conversion rate drop off every 24 hours, right? So the guy who calls today, his conversion rate's 40%. The guy who calls tomorrow, it's 20%. Everything else is identical. 50% drop off every 24 hours.
It's like managing a short-term rental. I took over my short-term rentals from a management company. The return on my money is just expedited. I don't even know 10 times, but it's all about communication. I totally agree with you.
Yeah. I mean,
it's the same concept, right?
Essentially, it's exactly the same.
Yeah.
And the thing with the short-term rentals, I tell all my clients is, you got to treat it like a business, right? If
it is a business.
Yeah, that's the thing. The short-term rentals, a lot of people are like, oh, it's an investment. Like, no, not an investment. It's a business.
And you're running it full time.
Yeah. Or somebody better be. But and then with the other ones is you have to delegate it, right? Most entrepreneurs can't run marketing. They do marketing, then they focus on what the marketing produces. They drop the ball in marketing. Marketing takes a long time to pick back up. In real estate, it's about 90 days. If I want to know how you're going to do today, I just need to look at your marketing from 3 months ago. So I think that, if you follow all of these basic rules in business, you are going to have a lot of success. And number 10 is you got to measure your net worth. This is one of the biggest things that I see. People will come to me, Tom, I don't know what happened. I've been doing all this work. I've got nothing to show for it. I've moved millions around and I got I don't know what I'm going wrong. I feel like I'm on a hamster wheel. What's your net worth? Oh, it's like 5 million. Let's sit down and always do this, by the way. If you ever consult anybody, always do it with them and their spouse, not just yeah, 100%. Let's go through your net worth. Oh, oh, actually, it's negative 800,000. So measure your net worth with your spouse or your significant other, your fiance, whoever, every week, no matter what. Once you do it the first time, after that, it takes maybe 5 minutes to do, right? What is the price of gold? What is the sellable value of the notes? What is the current price of the real estate? Whatever your net worth is, my primary house, this and that, the S&P 500. I mean, if you just literally those 10 rules, if people just implement those 10 rules, I don't want to say you can't fail, but it's hard to fail because when you're looking, you see it.
What power does it bring to have that meeting with your spouse?
Oh, brother, it is the best thing for your marriage because money is one of the biggest problems. And then people have shame associated with it. Whatever your net worth is, and any of your listeners, I would say this, I would encourage you, even if it's below zero, which it is for a lot of people, even if it's below zero, you've got to measure it every single week.
So this is really timely, actually, because I just had Ted and I were talking when we were recording an intro. I had a little meetup group. I do a coffee kind of get together once a week on Thursdays. And one of the topics that came up yesterday was scorecarding yourself. And there's, everybody has different areas of their life. Like we talked about early on in this episode where you have, you've got family, personal goals, finance, like your business stuff, like kids. There's different facets of your life that you can be measured on if you're really thinking about it. And I think, a good scorecard for your progress toward your goals financially is going to be your personal financial statement, and your net worth is the end number that is going to get tallied up by the time you factor your liabilities and assets and payments and all that. So I started doing an update by necessity because my banks keep pestering me for it of my PFS every quarter. And I was talking with one of my business partners about how often you guys do yours, because they have 3,000 units and they're in syndications and a whole bunch of complicated stuff.
Well, if you're following Tom's rules, you're going to do a PFS every single week for your wife.
Yeah.
Essentially.
Well, but go ahead, Tom.
Well, I was just going to say, it's funny because what I have found by mentoring a lot of these sophisticated, look really good, professional, lots of moving parts, huge portfolio people is that they're hyper spenders and they're totally broke and they're in way too much debt and they're a huge risk. And we've had a bull market for 17 years. And everyone who went out in 2008 were those people. They look good. Everything's good. I'll loan them money. How could it ever be that they could ever make a mistake? They're so big. They can't fail. They're professional. Those are all the people who the first thing they did was they didn't take the sick dogs behind the barn and kill them. And then they did the second huge mistake in 2008, and they started taking good money and putting it to save bad deals. So to me, those fancy people that are way smarter than me and tell me that, 20% cash is way too high. And Tom, if I pay my taxes late, I set to 3% and no, thanks. No, thanks. I know I've seen it. Bull market. Everyone thinks they're a superhero. Everyone thinks they're wearing a Superman cape of how great and fancy they are. They're not that fancy. Math is math. And, and also money is not not that there's any superiority here. I'm saying this from a position of one of the first things I learned in business is you are 2 bad decisions away from the gutter. So the more fancy and that you think you are, and the more you use big words like arbitrage and novations and equity and ARV and all these complicated things that seem like, oh yeah, I really know what they mean, but nobody does, especially the words like scale and lead. Well, what is a lead? Oh, when they call in, or when they fill in an application, or when they show up to the call, or people, they just get in their own way. You've got to follow the rules, the ancient rules, the old rules, the 3,000-year-old rules, especially if you're fancy, especially if you feel like you don't have to, especially if you're struggling people who are struggling financially, they focus on cash flow, not net worth. It's funny. There's like a pendulum. There's like a bell curve that you see with people who think they're doing really, really well and people who are actually struggling. They're both like obsessed with cash flow, and they're both ignoring net worth. Your net worth is going down every single month, and you're focused on cash flow. I guarantee you're going to have a problem. I can guarantee it. This whole like, oh, well, Robert Kiyosaki told me about cash flow. You're misunderstanding his advice. Sorry, I get emotional about this because I get phone calls from people.
No, it's great stuff. And I'd like to, kind of put a bow on this. The whole personal financial statement and net worth conversation that we were talking about yesterday was the longer you go in really in life, and when your measuring stick is going to be your personal financial statement, I like looking back at those every once in a while because if you do journaling like we talked about, it's interesting to look back at your mindset or the stuff you're worried about or happy about a year ago, 2 years ago, 10 years ago.
Right.
If you do that with your personal financial statement, it's like a chronicle of your decisions that you made financially over a long period of time. And it really is a great measuring stick to see if you're on the right path or not, because that thing should be trending upward. And if you take into account, the time value of money and exponential growth by compounding interest and all those things, it's like if you're doing the right moves and you're in real estate, I think it's really, long term, it's the ticket. Now, we also do have a section of our podcast that we talk about something that hasn't gone great, maybe over time or maybe an isolated incident. But you have anything that has maybe been talk worthy that we could talk about in our segment called
Failing Forward?
This Failing Forward is brought to you by Magic Door.
Magic Door is the AI-powered property management platform designed to handle everything from the rent cycle to the vacancy and maintenance cycles. During the rent cycle, Magic Door collects rent, sends automatic reminders, deducts management fees, and distributes payments to owners. In the vacancy cycle, Magic Door streamlines listings, tenant applications, seamless multi-language communication, screening tenants, and converting applications into leases with one click. And for the maintenance cycle, Magic Door's AI handles everything, asking tenants key questions, assigning tasks to vendors, and scheduling repairs automatically without you getting involved. With no hidden fees, no onboarding costs, and seamless AI-powered automation, Magic Door takes care of the entire property management lifecycle so you can focus on what matters most.
Well,
you obey up Bell. We have singing over here.
I love it. I've only got about 4 more hours until my next call, so I don't know if it's going to be quite enough time to discuss my failures. But I love what Jeff Bezos says, right? Like, if you haven't seen nothing yet on my failures, right? What was that? The guy from the brothers with the Google goggles, right, or whatever they were called. Here's what I would say. I think that what I was taught, again, none of this is original, right? But what I was taught is it's all results. There's no success and failure, and whoever gets the most results wins, right? It's kind of like a little bit of a variation on the Michael Jordan take your shots, right? Whoever has the most shots is going to make the most baskets, even outside of talent. That kind of stuff appeals to me because, I do have persistence and I can outwork other people. I think my failures, so my failures was the first time. I've had so many, I don't even know which one to pick, but the
most radio worthy one.
Yeah, the most radio-worthy one. Well, my first failure was when I had gotten fired, and getting fired, and I came home. I was out looking for a job. I came home early. Julie's in the bathroom crying about whether or not she should pay the mortgage or buy groceries because we knew the lenders on this house. But I would say one that people could relate to is I could not scale past a certain number. I remember one time at Wholesaling Inc., we had, I won't go into too much detail just because it's a personal story of one of the team members, but there was a team member who had a significant health issue, and we were super supportive, and he this individual was covered in under our health insurance. Well, I had a meeting where our payroll and I don't know all the terminology because I had a team who was doing it, but whatever it was, the payroll company was too expensive. So one of the people said, "Oh, we should change payroll companies and we'll save X amount and blah, blah, blah." I'm like, "Great, no problem. Do it." Right. Okay, great. So did that. And it caused a total debacle because that, which I didn't know at the time, was actually controlling our health insurance, changed our health insurance plan. That person who was sick actually was no longer covered. And this was not something that we could just be like, "Oh, no big deal, we'll cover it." It was a significant health care thing. And yeah, I think that, how did I fail forward? Probably not the answer that you either want or are used to getting of like, "Oh, I overcame." But the truth is, I found my level and I decided to stick. I don't think, one thing that I heard Donald Trump say, which I think is the most true thing, no matter how anybody feels about Donald Trump, is he said, the number one predictor of entrepreneurial success is your ability to handle pressure. And I have found my level of pressure, and I have no interest in trying to challenge it. I think that, I think that there are other, money and business is a game. And once you win the game, there's no joy in running up the score. This is where harmony, to wrap up this whole conversation, comes back into play, right? Harmony comes back into play here is you don't have to move the goalpost. You can go pick a new one, whether it's faith, family, friends, fitness, finance, whatever. But this whole idea of like, I just have to keep running up the score of a one game. I've met these people. They're miserable. They might have the new Ferrari every 6 months, but they're having all sorts of problems that once you get to know these people, you don't want to have. So I will say this, my failing forward was, you don't always have to, you can find your limit. Something, Robert Kiyosaki told me, he says, find the red line. And, and that's where life begins, is at the red line. But I think that there's also over revving the engine. And if you just keep pushing and ignoring other things, you could have major problems.
Well, kind of in the same realm of questions, you bought a lot of properties over the years.
Oh yeah.
And one of the probably favorite questions that we ask people is, do you have any crazy or weird investment stories that's happened over the years? Something that you found in a property, something that was kind of off kilter, something that you saw, something that just makes good conversations.
Yeah, it's how many properties, and there's multiple ones that we've purchased or been a part of in some kind of a transition or transaction, where we have found it's still wrapped in its plastic, the Carlton Sheets How to Invest in Real Estate with No Money Down program at the bottom of a closet under a mountain of debris that has never been opened. And by the way, for any of your listeners, I will say this: all the old stuff that Peter Conti, like David Finkel, like the 80s Carlton Sheets, and
back in Owen's day.
You're talking to me, man, right here.
Yeah.
You could buy that stuff on eBay. It is profound and wonderful and still is applicable today. If not more so, it's better than some of the new stuff. And it's the same I love in one of the first books I ever read was Peter Conti and David Finkel about no money down real estate.
Yeah, it was lease options, and they had that whole thing. I still have their books.
I have that book somewhere. It's right there. And he does that back and forth conversation with the seller about, well, it's a nice property. Why would you consider selling it? Why don't you lease it? Why don't you just rent it out? I was like, that's brilliant. I mean, this is like brilliant, right? But you could buy this stuff on eBay for pennies on the dollar.
Dude, everything's just recycled nowadays.
Yeah.
You know what though? You know what I remember specifically from his books is I remember the talk track that he would go on. He would give you examples of conversations with sellers, and then I remember him, and he was role playing, and he said, and I was a big I love the whole sales, like the psychology of it, the whole sit down, just the mechanics of how the dynamic between the seller and buyer. And I remember vividly reading that. This is 25 years ago.
Are you sure that you didn't listen to an E-track?
HVAC?
8-track?
Oh,
yeah.
Now my hearing's going too.
Yeah, I know.
Probably. It could have been cassettes. But I remember reading that, and he said, God dang it, you threw me off track. 8-track. So he would say, at the he would ask a question. He would say, do you think this is a good idea or probably not? Like he would say,
I
or
love
probably not. Remember that?
It fried into my brain. I still use it today.
I started using that like when because I think I was in even financial planning at the time. So I was going out and schlepping, insurance products and like, mutual funds and Roth IRAs and all that. But I started using that on some of my stuff. Like I'd be like, it's an assumptive closing that's the flip of what people normally do, which is try to be like get you to say yes. And but if you feed them information like
is your closing trail.
I know this is not going to be for you, but what would you think about? And then you talk about something, and then it was amazing the results you get out of that. It really was. Like I was like, so I want to pay homage to those guys because they were an asterisk of the education that I taught myself through reading, just like paperback books and hardback books back in the day, like the early on stuff. And that was foundational for like building off of that into, direct to seller appointments and trying to hone my craft and communicating well and getting to a point where I could buy something.
I love it.
And,
but I use probably not, honestly, to this day. I still use would that work for you or probably not?
Probably not. Or probably not. That's the one thing that always has stuck out about those guys is like that just, it's like a laser in my, it's burning into my brain.
Well, you know what it is too? It's like, it's that Oren Klaff. He has a book called Flip the Script, and it's really the quintessential, like there's always one foot out the door, right? And so instead of convincing them, you're making it their idea. They're convincing you. Like, why do you even want to sell? Are you sure you want to sell? What are you going to do with the money? Why don't you rent it out? Why don't you leave? Is this going to work for you? Probably not. I'm going to head it out. Don't worry. I love that.
I always loved John Martinez's stuff too. He had a whole series on that type of sales training. And he was always like, look, hey, you don't want to, I totally get it. You don't want to buy this. We'll go somewhere. It's kind of not necessarily just the takeaway, but he always had that, like, he wasn't high pressure. He's just real. And I always really respected that approach toward selling, someone on something because I don't like being hard sold. You just tell me why this is a benefit or it's going to solve my problem. And then, we can have a really meaningful conversation. But if you're like, here's the features and benefits of what I'm selling, like I'm going to tune you out right away.
It's interesting. I was just on the phone with Jerry Green yesterday, actually. And he bought, I guess, Martinez's business. I'm sure that's public knowledge, right? That he owns it, but I think maybe
it is now.
Well, it is now. But I was just on the phone with Jerry, and he was saying, I mean, that program is phenomenal. I recommended my clients still. It's all the same stuff from.
He's so good.
Yeah, that was good stuff for sure.
Well, this has been, man. I can't tell you. And here's the thing. So at the end of
He's
all
fanboying
this,
you right
now.
Yeah, no.
At the end of all this, conversation that we've had, I have a page of notes here that I was going to ask you questions that were more tactical and real estate related and so forth. But I love the way this went.
And based on your business and
based on our business, we have similar backgrounds in like flipping houses and wholesaling and rentals and all that and just sales in general. So I would love to have you back at some point for a part 2 where we could just dig into the details and be like, here's exactly what we do in this situation, or what have you done? What have I done? And we can all talk about that. But this is, I just got lost in the whole mindset conversation because I love it so much.
Awesome.
So this has been super. I'm going to be pumped after this call. Like I'm really happy. But we do have one section left in the podcast that we call the
OT with Owen and Ted. You are in the OT with Owen and Ted, presented by JM Real Estate Capital.
Hi, it's Rob, JM Real Estate Capital. We're the money guys that you need to know for all your real estate investments. Talk to us. We can do what your local bank can't or won't do. We don't have millions. We have trillions with a T to lend. 844-week close, or go online, jmrecapital.com. That's jmrecapital.com. JM Real Estate Capital, smart solutions for the real estate investor.
No singing there.
Yeah, no singing.
Yeah, it would be really weird if we sung that.
We're just rapping.
Yeah.
So we have a section that we cover that has the same questions for each guest, and we're gonna fire these bad boys at you. I think you have a rough idea what we're going with, but
I remember vaguely.
Yeah, you never know what's going to come out of Ted.
Yeah, I throw some random stuff in every once in a while.
Let's hear it. I'm ready.
All right, first question for you. And this is one we have not even brought up yet, but what is the title of your first book and what's it about?
Oh, the first book I ever wrote, which was called The Greatest Business, was published right at the sale of Wholesaling Inc. So it is right as I was selling, we were getting ready for this big book launch, and then we went, wait. So it did make it out there. It's back there somewhere. It's that one with the orange cover, but it's called The Greatest Business, and it's essentially a step-by-step guide on how to wholesale real estate.
So you did release it or didn't release it?
We did release it. It's still
Okay.
available. Brent
Okay.
Daniels, who now owns Wholesaling Inc., gives it out to a lot of people, and he has the original cover, which is pretty interesting because it's a funny picture of me. But yeah, that was the first one.
So do you have a second book out there?
So I have one that we just got the publisher's approval. So we got a thumbs up, and it's called The Generous Expert, which is essentially a book on how to create a coaching, consulting business, which is really what I'm in now. And that book is about to be published. It's not published just yet, but it is a book on why coaching is so much better than real estate. What are you guys doing in real estate? Real estate's great, but coaching is where it's at. Bam!
We were talking about that.
Oh,
Hey,
yeah.
So we'll add that first book too. Is that on Amazon?
The Generous Expert is not. The first book is still available, but the second book has not been published yet. It's approved, it's edited, it's proofread, the whole thing. We went through the whole thing, but we haven't released it yet, so it's about to be.
So John will add the links to the first book on our show notes, and then in regards to the second book, when you do get that done, we'll add it to the show notes after the fact.
I will do that. That's the first time I've talked about it publicly, so there you go. Awesome.
We are kind of known here at REIA Radio for getting announcements for books.
I love it.
We've had, 12?
At least, yeah.
12, 15 authors on. So this has been, it's been a lot of fun getting to know this whole process.
Awesome.
Okay, so Tom, you got a podcast out there, right?
Well, I do. So it's Coaching Inc., and we just finished season 1, and now we're going to be launching season 2. I was actually in the studio this morning, which is why I have my shirt on. I don't usually wear this shirt. But so I have my Coaching Inc. shirt. It's the Coaching Inc. podcast.
Okay, so Tom, we are on Coaching Inc. podcast. You can interview anyone in the world today, no matter who it is, as long as they're still alive. Who's it going to be, and what's the one question you would ask them?
Oh, it would for sure be. So I've been very fortunate and blessed to meet most of the biggest people in our space and spend time with them.
That's the best part about podcasting.
Yeah, right. So I love it, right? So yes, that's one of my secrets to all of my coaches is start a podcast and then call really important people and be like, hey, I'd love to have you on my podcast. You know what? I have a podcast too. Why don't we do a podcast swap? It's like, oh, I love it.
I want to podcast swap you any day.
I'm done. We're going to do it. So I'd love to meet Bill Bonner from Agora Financial because when I got to know some of his people who really helped me in Wholesaling Inc. and for free. It's one of the rare times I had some real mentorship without paying for it. And Agora, I think, is just a genius corporation. And I never got to even come close to meeting him. So I would love to be able to do that. And the questions, I would have 1,000 questions because once I get OCD on coaching and consulting and being a knowledge broker, I want to know how he did it specifically. So I'd pepper him with questions and I wouldn't let him get up until he was like, hey, I got to go.
So if there's a part 2 to this, Owen's got those questions for you on the wholesaling side because he has his own wholesaling business.
Yeah, I love it. Let's do it.
All right. So we have a kind of sad question, although inspirational for some. You're dead. We're at your funeral.
You never just drop you're dead. You've never said that.
And there is somebody walking up to the podium, or maybe more than one person, to give your eulogy. Who's it going to be? And what do you hope they're going to say about you?
Ready? Here we go. No one, nothing. I think this whole idea of legacy is ridiculous. Even if people do remember you, which is going to be a handful for a couple of years after we're gone, it's going to be the memory won't match the reality anyway. So my position is there's no legacy. I don't want a eulogy. Put me in a pine box, put me in the ground, put me in a mushroom suit and grow some oyster mushrooms and enjoy them. And there is no legacy and there's no memory. In 100 years from now, people aren't even going to remember the century that all of us were alive. Forget actual people. I mean, I read news stories about people of things that happened in the morning. I'll see a news story in the evening that's a total misrepresentation of what happened. If I think that the people are going to remember me accurately 5 seconds after I pass away. I'm a crazy person. I think a lot of entrepreneurs have this, like, there's going to be 10,000 people at our funeral. Right? The fire trucks are going to be shooting water like over the cars as they. That's not going to happen. There's going to be like 5 to 10 people there. Like,
maybe if you make a donation at the end of your life towards the fire department, that would happen.
There you go. Make a donation to the fire department and move on. And life is for the living.
I told my kids at one point, I was like, just take the money that I put together by that time in my life, and put enough donations to a park so my name can be on a park. Like I said.
They're not doing that. They're not doing that.
You know that you're gonna have mustaches drawn on your picture.
Oh yeah, there you go.
So I put a brand new sign at an apartment listing I had. Somebody stole the sign 3 days later. Right?
Oh,
great story. And then they bent the frame in half, and they're like, you got $100 and some invested. And I'm like, oh my gosh! And my daughter's with me, and she's like, Dad, you know what happened, right? My 7-year-old. And I'm like, what? She's like, that person thought you were so cute that they took that sign and they put it in her room.
Oh,
I was like,
he's going through that daddy-daughter phase still.
I was like, I love you.
That'll change at 14. Just as a heads up.
Yes, it will. You are exactly right.
Stop.
Yeah.
Stop right now. I don't like you guys anymore. She is my cuddle bug. She is gorgeous and she is innocent. And I don't listen to anything you guys say.
I get it, brother. I get it.
Tom, you look at your life in whole. You, as a coach yourself, personal life, business life. If you had to pick one person that was a mentor in your life that got you to where you are at now, maybe the person that first put real estate in your mind, for person that first put coaching in your mind. Who's the person that had the biggest impact on you in either personal life or business life?
I mean, it would have to be my stepbrother, Todd Tobeck, right?
I love it.
Yeah, he's the best. He's the best.
Original podcaster.
What's that?
Your original podcast.
Original podcast. I've had other people who poured into me after that, and but Todd was the launching pad. I still talk to him 10 times a day, every day. We are going.
Do you really? That was going to be one of my questions for you, because
yeah.
I didn't know if, it's like you find somebody's origin story and then it seems like they have a really good relationship with somebody. And then you talk to them and you're like, oh yeah, how's that one guy or gal that blah, blah, blah. And you're like, oh yeah, we're in lawsuits.
Yeah.
It's cool to hear that, because that's a while, right?
That's because they partnered. That's why. No partnership.
There you go.
Never break rule number 4. And I'll tell you the conversation today that we had, it started at 10 a.m. this morning. He said, call me. Then I said, this is funny. It's how serendipitous. I said, this is the conversation, so everybody knows that I'm telling the truth. The conversation was, how old? I asked him, how old were we when we were at St. Andrews? He said, I was there 5th grade. I was in 5th. You were in 4th. And he said, do you remember when the headmaster made that dude put gum on his nose and said, wear it? And I was like, I do. And we went through the whole conversation. So we were, we've been best buds for a long time. And
That's really cool. Yeah.
He's awesome.
What we gotta do is give us a referral to Todd. We'll get him on,
done. Of course.
And then we'll interview him, and then this story will have a full circle.
Yeah. I always thought it was funny though, because like when your episode came out, he was like, like a dozen or 14. Your episode number 14, so he was 14 episodes in, and he was like, "Welcome to the dojo."
Yeah,
that was his whole like. He had. I was just curious.
You're making me nervous.
That's changed over time, so it was just. I don't know. This was just funny to me. It's like very nostalgia. Oriented.
That was a great adventure, man. Holy Toledo. He really did it. He was rough, but that's what I did. Sometimes you need that, man. Whew.
Yeah. I would say one thing that came out in your early days with that was it seemed like you were infinitely coachable, because you asked really good questions. You weren't afraid to ask questions, even though, like people's instinct when somebody knows more than they do about something, it's like, okay, I don't want to feel dumb asking this.
Yeah.
But you were, and not that you did at all, but you were just asking really good questions, I thought, even if they were, obvious to people that have been in the industry forever. So I think that's a good takeaway for people. It's like, if you have the opportunity to mentor or be a mentee under somebody, like just ask your questions, because somebody else is going to have them. And at some point, the mentor that you're talking to, or even if it's an informal relationship, they have the exact same questions. So who gives a shit? Like, ask them.
That's the whole problem, is that so many people are afraid that they're going to look dumb.
Yep.
This is why I always teach coaches, don't be esoteric. No specialized knowledge to a small group. Don't use the word arbitrage, because the minute you do that, you're going to lose 70% of the audience, because they don't know what arbitrages or, S Corp or whatever. So
Thanks for using that word.
yeah, I'm telling you.
Ted's like on ChatGPT
Checking my stats right now, and I'm like, holy shit.
How would I use arbitrage?
Yeah, it's a bear. It's a bear. But you gotta follow, do what your mentors say, and don't try to understand. That was the thing too. Is he told me early on. This is such a gold nugget. He said, don't ask me any questions. And what I did was he said, just do what I tell you to do. And that's literally what I did. I didn't understand why. And I made every mistake in the book. And I sent out my first mailing with the wrong thing and to the wrong list. But that was the difference, is I didn't have to understand why I was doing it. Everybody nowadays, they want to know, like, why is it? No, you haven't earned that right. You have not earned the right to find out why. Just do. If you trust the mentor and he's telling you something ethical and logical, keep your mouth shut and do what they tell you to do, because that is the biggest differential of who is a rocket ship and who's just like, they never even open the course.
Okay, fact check me on this. Did you or did you not sell a golf cart?
I did.
At one point to pay for marketing.
I did.
You sold a golf cart to pay for marketing for your wholesaling business when you were first getting started, because you didn't have any other sources of cash. Is that right?
Well, yeah. Well, people are like, oh, well, I'm broke. I'm like, you weren't as broke as I was. I was behind on mortgage. Yes, I had a golf cart. We live in Florida, but you know what? That was a 4-seater, and now this one's a 6-seater. So, bam! There you go. There you go.
All right. Well, this has been so fun, Tom. I've got one more question for you.
Let's do it.
Are you looking for anything in your business or just world right now that somebody catching this episode? Like, is there anything that's like a bottleneck or a problem point or maybe a goal that you have that, somebody might be able to help you with or connect you with somebody?
Not in business. Right. So I think I've kind of moved on to a few other things. I'm happy where I'm at there. Next great adventure is fitness. I've got to figure this out. I do not know what is, this is the next big adventure. I got to get, I don't want a 6-pack, but this is not working. I'm getting tired in the middle of the day. That's a Murphy bed right there. That thing opens up. I take a nap. Yeah, no. I gotta. Yeah, fitness is the next great adventure. So that's what I'm gonna be working on.
Good for you, man. Yeah, and it's actually Ted and I were just talking, ironically, about this exact same thing before we hit record or before you jumped on, about just like age. When you're 45, 50, like in that era, it's like, that becomes a real thing. Like, you're used to being, having a bunch of energy, and then you gotta really manage that and keep an eye on it. So,
what I was saying was that I've been going to the gym for almost 8 years now, 5 days a week, and I'm not losing the weight. I still have the belly fat, and welcome to middle age, right?
Oh, it's true. I used to be able to lose weight so fast. Like, I would just fast for a few days, and I would be like, boom. Now, forget it. And then yesterday was Halloween. I had like two Reese's peanut butter cups in my mouth, and I was holding
like a squirrel.
What is going on around here? It's a nightmare. I was going up, crashing down, waking up and re-eating more candy.
I was just excited that my watch said I walked 2 miles. So
that's pretty good.
I was like, here we go, baby.
That's pretty good.
Okay, so first off, Tom, thank you so much for coming on. And you know what? I gotta give you a shout out. We're friends on Facebook, and the communication that you give is absolutely amazing. You don't miss a beat. You're such a real person. It isn't like you're like too big to talk to somebody. So, and for being the guy that tries to book everybody on a podcast, I appreciate that, and I just want to give you a shout out for that.
Thank you, brother.
Thank you so much for being you.
Bam.
So, if you listen to the first time or the 158th time, we appreciate you guys. Please give us a review on your favorite format. We are 100-something reviews. I think that's way too small. I feel like
kind of lame.
We have 7,800 followers on Facebook. I feel like we should have at least half of that in reviews.
Right. Yeah. 5-star, preferably.
Yeah. All 5 stars except that one 4-star person. We don't like you. And but with that, Owen Dashner, we see us out.
On behalf of REIA Radio, Aiden Bear, and Ted Kash, I'm Owen Dashner, and you've been listening to Tom, no eulogy for you, Krol, signing off.
So, Tom, first off, thank you so much for coming on here. We appreciate you. But actually, radio edit that out. I was jumping a line down, so I apologize.
So it's his first podcast. Sorry,
first one.
Hard to find good co-hosts.
Get out of here. So, okay, radio edit. I wrote a note for Owen, and I meant to do it. That was good. But Owen, 8-track real estate investor.
Oh, shit.
I will go in. I will rate the podcast. I'll review it right now. I'll leave a nice review. I'll share it online. Absolutely. I'll get you guys some followers. That'll be a great adventure.